Hi, now we continue to extend our ability to create and use graphs. If you see over here in my replit, you'll now see that there are 6 files that I created, which is 2 more than we had before. One of them, city.java, we will not be looking at today, but I want to give you a little foreshadowing, and it is already there. The other is Vnode, and we will be looking at Vnode very soon. First, let's take a quick look at what we did before. We printed hello world. We created a couple of nodes. We created a new edge, and that was the start of our first graph. We created a hash set of nodes, which was my nodes, and a hash set of edges, which was my edges, which were empty. These are constructors that create empty hash sets. And then we added the 3 nodes that we had created already up here. Actually, I believe two nodes. We added 2 nodes, and we added an edge, and we created an edge, and we made a graph out of that, and we printed it. And then we got a little bit more complicated, and we created a whole set of edges and nodes with this loop here, okay? And we created a graph out of that, and we printed it out. That's what these lines of code, this output here is a bunch of numbers pointing to other numbers, because we had the only thing that a node had was an identifier number. Well, that's sort of interesting, but what we'd really like to do is to extend the concept to not just numbers, but for example, names. Suppose we have a bunch of people such as Jane, Sarah, Becky, and Tracy, and we have edges or connections or friendships between them. We would like to be able to capture those relationships, and that's what this code over here does. As before, we create a hash set of nodes. This time, the name of the variable is girls. Don't tell them that I called them girls. And then a hash set of nodes, which was empty. And then we had made a hash set of edges called friendships, and a hash set of edges that was empty. Then what we did was we added a sequence of nodes to the hash set of nodes, but you'll notice that these are different kind of node than we've made before. These aren't just nodes, these are an extension of the concept of a node that allows us to create a node which has an identifier that isn't a number, but is instead a name. And this requires the creation of a new class that extends a node, and that's what Vnode is down here. So let's take a look at Vnode, because it's relatively simple. Notice the declaration, public class Vnode extends node. This is our first experience within the context of graphs of using inheritance. And so all the characteristics of node, and there's not very many of them, but nodes do have some characteristics, are inherited into our new kind of node called a Vnode. The only thing a Vnode has is a private field of type object and name value. And this is actually really cool because we can now put any object into our Vnode because our constructor allows us to take an argument of type object, and then locally we name it V, and we'll explain what this is in a moment. And all we do is we assign V equal to value. Put V into our local field called value. This here is an invocation of the superclass's constructor, and v.hashcode is the hashcode method is a method that gets basically a random number associated with any object, and in case you happen to need it. And as it works out, I need to invoke the constructor for the node with an argument of an integer in order to construct the superclass's portion of the node. And so that's what this line of code does. And we'll have some later discussions about what super is and why super works and what it's for. But suffice it to say that we need this in order to be able to run, in order to employ the superclass called node. We also have a very straightforward toString method that simply takes our object and converts it to a string using its toString method, and whatever it produces, we use for our toString method. That then is the creation of the additional concept of a node. In the next video, we'll talk about how we're able to use it in order to get this output over here on the right.